Okay, grab the perfect amount. I felt like way too many.
Like way too
So we're gonna do a 2-sample t-test. And then the information is at the top, so like comparing pizza prices in Ann Arbor to Chicago. Have you worn a hat before? Sure. Threw me off.
You were not a hag guy. Savage. Yes.
What's up?
I wore one a lot in the summer. That's kind of my supposed to wear it every day. And sometimes I just couldn't be with it.
It's hot too.
That's, I don't wear sunglasses.
Is that like a moral stance?
It's the, I have glasses and I don't wear glasses.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so obviously those are different, but the question is like, are they different enough that I can be like, yeah, there's a statistically significant difference between them? Or is it just like, well, these ones that I sampled, like, of course they're gonna be a little different, that's not too bad. So, incredibly similar to everything we've done. We'll start by saying, let's do like mu A. I'm gonna do mu A and mu C for like Ann Arbor and Chicago. You can do mu 1 and mu 2. So mu A is the true population mean pizza price in Ann Arbor. And then mu C, true population mean pizza price in Chicago. So instead of there being like a claim and then we have one set of data, we're comparing like our data to the claim. We're comparing data to other data. So it's, we've got 2 samples instead of 1. So then HO would be that mu A equals mu C. Or we've done it before where you put like mu A minus mu C equals 0. That's also valid. I think this is like a lot more intuitive to look at. I'll do this one, but when we do the template, I'll show you the other. And then I didn't really say what we're looking at, did we? Let's say we think Ann Arbor's cheaper. So our guess is that the average in Ann Arbor is less than the average in Chicago. And let's use alpha equals 0.05. That's your significance level. And then I would probably, like if I were, if this were on a conditions, so shape, center, spread. So it's the same as it was for the one sample t-test, it's just you're looking at that to be true for both samples. So the shape is approximately normal for both. Sorry, the shape is approximately normal because, what? Both samples are greater than or equal to 30. Both and greater than or equal to 30. Section space. The center, we kind of get to decide right now which order we want to do it. Because I didn't put a subtraction up here, I just said they're equal. But we are combining, so we're going to be subtracting. So I'm going to do x bar A minus x bar C. So I'm just deciding the order I'm going to subtract. Ann Arbor minus Chicago. So if I did that with my samples that I currently see, what would I get? I think someone, yeah, I get -2, right? I have to do like the 18 minus the 20. Is -2. And why am I allowed to say that the center of this combined distribution is going to be the same as the center of these? I didn't really tell you this. Yeah, so let's just say assume randomness, because I didn't write it. So like, because randomness is assumed. And then for spread independence, we got 40 is less than or equal to 10% of all the Ann Arbor pizzas. And 30 is less than or equal to 10% of Chicago pizzas. So this is a test, right? So we're looking for the t-statistic. If it was an interval, I'd be putting like statistic plus or minus critical value times standard deviation. It was a test, so I want the test statistic. So it is statistic minus parameter over standard deviation. So when we're comparing, we're subtracting. If I'm subtracting the statistics, that's going to be the order I set up here. So it's like x bar A minus x bar C. So that's the difference in my sample. I'm going to put here mu A minus mu B because the population, the parameter says the population values. But in a second, when I go to my next step, what is mu A minus mu C? It's 0 because up here I declared, like, we're assuming they're equal. So if they're equal and I subtract them, I will get 0. So that'll be like the next step. Then the standard deviation, you can have your note card or whatever for the formula. It's the standard deviation, or sorry, the square root of, and then the standard deviation of x bar A squared, the sample size of A. It's a lot of like sub-letters there. Plus the standard deviation of B squared over the sample size of B. C. Chicago. Thanks. And then we plug in the numbers, and then we're just going to go to our calculator to have standard deviation of A is anybody? It's 5. Okay. I thought someone said 40. I was just making sure. 5 squared. The sample size of A is 40. And then the standard deviation of Chicago is 4 squared, and the sample size there is 30. But nobody wants to compute all that mess. So grab your calculator.
So let's see what's happening on page real quick.
You can do that. Well, I can do it like while I show it. So go to SAT tests, 2 sample t-test, so it's number 4. I can't really, so then, I don't have the data, but sometimes you will. So you could throw the data in L1 and L2 if you had like a list of numbers, and then you could tell the calculator, you figure out those standard deviations and mean all that stuff. But I don't have that, I have the stats, I have the statistics, like the summary of the data. So, X bar 1, I'm gonna do Ann Arbor as 1, and Chicago as 2. So X bar 1 is 18. Standard deviation is 5, sample size is 40. And then for number 2, average is 20, standard deviation is 4, sample size is 30. We will not do pooled. So that pooled will always be no. It's just like a different way to do it. And the AP test accepts both ways, but to me it's just like, why are there 2 ways? We can just learn 1 and we're fine. So we're just gonna learn 1 and we're fine. And we said less than. So remember, you want the greater than less than symbol to point the same way it does on your paper. I know that gets confusing a little bit with the way they wrote it, but just always remember the same direction. And then you can do calculate or draw. So that gives me a t-score of negative 1.858. And there's my p-value, but remember we gotta kind of jump through the hoops and pretend that we're gonna find it. And then degrees of freedom. So this is a little goofy for this one. There's 2 ways you can do degrees of freedom that they accept for a 2 sample test. For a 1 sample test, remember degrees of freedom is n minus 1. So for a 2 sample, you can do the smaller n minus 1. So like out of 40 and 30, 30 is smaller, so your degrees of freedom would be 29. Or you can run the thing in the calculator and use what they told you. I know those are like fairly different numbers, but they accept both ways, and it results in like, it doesn't change the answer. So you could either do, like right here, I'm either gonna put degrees of freedom equals 29, or I'm gonna put degrees of freedom equals 67.7. One of them. It doesn't matter which one, they're both valid. And then I'm gonna pretend that I'm finding the p-value myself. So I've got a t equals negative 1.858. To the left, because it's negative, you always shade like to the tail. And then this is me finding the p-value on my own, even though I already know it. So the p-value is the size of that area. What's the left-hand boundary? Negative 9999. Right-hand boundary? Negative 1.858. And then you need to put in the degrees of freedom. I'm actually curious how different these are. So I'm gonna try the 29 and see. Does the calculator use the 67.7? I'm just curious how far apart they are. Does anybody have, what was the p-value for the way they did it? 0.036 if I use the other degrees of freedom. They're never gonna set it up so like one way you'd reject and the other way you wouldn't. They're always gonna be, so if you put 67.7 here, this is 0.034. If you put 29 here, it's 0.036. Both are valid, both are allowed, both are good. And then I got this little tiny space left for my conclusion. So since the p-value is less than alpha, because 0.036, right, is less than 0.05, we reject HO. Test is not statistically significant. It is statistically significant, sorry. It is statistically significant, because we made a decision, like we're calling you a liar, that's significant. But then, we do suspect HA is true. So those prices of our samples were far enough apart to convince me that, yeah, there is a difference. Ann Arbor pizza is cheaper than Chicago pizza, which is probably true. Questions on anywhere in there? Top part. That's all you do. Okay, let's do, do you want to do template next, or you do example next? I think we usually do template. Template next? Okay. Two sample t-test. Remember, every time it's a t-test, you're dealing with means. And then if you want to write, this is like the template. So you'd start off by saying mu1 or mu-a or whatever is the true population mean, and whatever the context is. Same for mu2. Very proud of you guys that know what it said Pokemon yet. And then, like, depending on what's in front of you, what's on your paper, whether you like to write stuff down, I don't know. I like to just go like x bar 1 equals whatever, standard deviation of x bar 1 is whatever, and n1 equals, so I'm just kind of like putting the summary, and I'm filling in whatever numbers are there. And then the same with 2. This is not a requirement because you will, like, throughout the process, you'll end up putting all of this information in there anyways. It's more like personal preference for me, because I'm just like, I like it just summarized there, especially if it's like a giant word problem. Words are stupid, I want numbers. And then I do my conditions, so shape, center, spread. Shape is kind of a long one because you have 3 possibilities. Oh, yeah, my bad. Thank you. So HO, yeah. Is going to be like mu1 equals mu2. Or it might say mu1 minus mu2 equals 0. Because those are the same thing. Thank you. And then HA could be like any of the 3 things. So it could be mu1 is less than, greater than, or not equal to mu2. Or So then we get to shape, and there's three possibilities. One would be that n is greater than or equal to 30 for both samples. Two would be, this is the part where you tell me what two would be. The what? Normal population. Not your sample, but if like the big picture population, if we know that's normal, we don't need at least 30. So that'd be like for both. So even if you have a sample size of like 7, if it tells you the population's normal, you're good to go. But if it doesn't, then remember, what's the third thing that we have to do that's annoying sometimes if we don't get one of those first two? So a dot plot shows no skew or outliers for both. So you gotta put like for both samples. The center, and you kind of get to declare at this point if you want it to be like x bar 1 minus x bar 2 or x bar 2 minus x bar 1. It doesn't matter. So I'll just say like x bar 1 minus x bar 2. If randomness for both samples is what I mean. When I say for both, I mean both samples. I should write that. And then spread, independence. That's the 10% thing, so we want little n1, so our sample, from our first sample to be less than 10% of capital N1 population. Like our little sample is less than 10% of the big sample. And the same thing for N2. So then we want the test statistic down here. Am I going too fast or am I okay? Okay. So T equals, this is always going to be statistic minus parameter over the standard deviation. That part is true whether it's one sample, two sample, test interval, it doesn't matter. T's, Z's, always this. So our statistic, remember because we're doing two samples, we're really subtracting them, so we're going to compare the sample subtraction to the population subtraction. But what's the population subtraction going to be every time? It's going to be 0. So this is like x bar 1 minus x bar 2. That's the subtraction for your statistics. Minus mu1 minus mu2, but we know that's going to be 0, we're just writing it to kind of show that we know what it is. And then it's divided by the standard deviation, which is the standard deviation of x bar 1 squared over n1. And then plus the standard deviation of x bar 2 squared over n2. And then you can go to your calculator and find out what T is. done like 3 of these where I've gone through all 3 of the scenarios, like left tail, right tail, both tails. Do you want me to write out all 3 scenarios again? Or I got some yeses and some no's. Raise your hand if you want all 3 scenarios written out. Now you're like, now people feel pressure. Alright, I don't want to write them either. So then you get a p-value with it, so you'll have a drawing. But, you know, it could be, I'm not writing all 3 scenarios. You'll do a drawing, and then you'll get a p-value. To get the p-value, you will do TCDF of something, comma something. This is like your low and your high. And it depends on, you know, whether we were doing a less than or on the left-hand side, right-hand side, or both. But what goes in that third, if you try to put this in, and I'm glad this happens, if you do TCDF of just like -999 up to -2 or something, it'll give you an error. Which is good, because then you're going to be like, oh yeah, for T's I need degrees of freedom. So you do need a degrees of freedom here. You're just writing it. But that could be the smaller n-1, or what the calculator tells you. And you're going to know the p-value regardless of whether, because you're never going to actually type this in, you know. You just got to make sure you're like, it's like jumping through the hoop to be like, yeah, I did it, I totally did it, it's right there. And then you get your conclusions. Is it fair enough to say I don't want to write the conclusions anymore? Just one? Alright, do one. So let's do, since p is less than alpha, and then you could reverse it, right? So since p is less than alpha, if this was the case, we would reject HO. The test is statistically significant. We do suspect HA. Or the opposite, you know. Let's see if I can write both. I might have enough. If P is greater than alpha, we failed to reject HO. Getting a little lazy with my words here. Not statistically significant, which is not actually a sentence, but that's okay. Not suspects HA. Questions anywhere in there, or like go back and show any certain part? I don't know if I went too fast anywhere. I think I can go through again. Okay. Let's do. Oh wait, you guys do an example. Can I take this away, or is anyone still writing it? You're still. You're good. Oh, you good. All right, let's say last geometry test. So Miss Duca and I both teach geometry. How's everybody leaving? What's going on? She's got 35 kids. Her average was an 85, and her standard deviation. But this is just on the last test. Standard deviation was 7. I have 80 kids. My average was 80. Standard deviation is 10. Alpha is 0.01. And I want to know supposed to make your prediction like before you see the data. So I would have just said, I don't know who's better. Let's just see if they're different. So you guys do that. I will too. Don't forget the title. Oh, you can't use a T because it's both. I'm doing Duca minus Davis. You can do it either way, but like if you want to follow along the order I'm doing it, that's what I'm doing. Oh, and these were totally SRSs, right? Oh, we're gonna run into another issue. I don't have 800 geometry students, but just pretend I do. This is a college now, yeah. show the whole thing, can you still see it? Check it as you go. If you got a question, let me know. Do you guys know? I don't know. Is Friday like all 6 classes?
Well, I think there's,
That's what I heard. It's 6.
Wait, Friday's right.
Friday's not.
Like, I don't know anything that's going on. I just know that's the first, every second hour. I don't know, probably I did both of those.
So you guys know about as much as I do.
I think it's gonna be 6 hours.
The rumor.
That's what it's usually.
But sometimes they do like.
that was just like a while ago. We've done that since like sophomore year.
I feel like it's when there's like partners. Like there's 2 half days like flows.
Yeah. Why is that?
I'm not sure because it's not an insert.
Friday?
Yeah, like I don't know.
Again? No, elementary school parent teacher conferences. Yeah, they don't Sunday.
Oh really?
That's the reason I'm.
So we did ours last Wednesday. Whatever. I'll take it. I sat there for 3 o'clock till 6:30 and talked to 2 parents.
I know, I don't think anybody's. Did you get paid for that?
Man, I'm salary, so not like an hourly.
Yeah.
Rodriguez crushed me. He had like 4 parents. Almost 1 per hour. So real quick on this, and then I just want to talk for a minute, then we're good. The p-value part, just because it's a little bit different or maybe confusing. If I just go by what's in my calculator, like I run the test, the calculator told me the degrees of freedom is 90, they told me the p-value. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it, because you don't have to like go back and do anything. If you wanted to do degrees of freedom as the smaller n minus 1, now you gotta go back and type this in and see what the p-value is. And you can see there's some close that's not gonna make a difference. I would not recommend ever doing that, but it is an option if you would like to use it. But again, they're never gonna give you like, where one comes out below alpha and the other one doesn't. It's always gonna be like they're right next to each other, they're either both below or both above. So you get the same conclusion either way. But, questions on that anywhere? Why'd you do this? I got something different here, anything? Tomorrow we're gonna do the 2 sample T interval. And really, we could probably have a test Friday, but so here's how it's gonna look. Friday and Monday we'll do review practice type stuff. Tuesday you'll have a test. Wednesday we'll check it, and then you're gonna have an assignment to do over spring break. But I'm also gonna give you Thursday and Friday in class to do it. So you'll have.
Test part two.
What's that? Oh. This is not evil. It's just gonna be we've done 8 things. Like 1 sample, 2 sample, T's, Z's, test intervals. It's gonna be one of these.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's kind of just like forcing you to review all of them, basically.
When is spring break? Yeah, we won't be here tomorrow.
Next Friday is our last day.
What the
The week
freak?
after.
This week and next week.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's going
If you're good with this, you're good. Got a question, let me know. When's for us?
Dude,
So you guys will be here.
that's crazy.
Day and night.
He has to work so many times.
How many are in Choral Festival?
I think it's just
Yeah. That's all like,
Sounds like
parents
a
like
free
those
day.
people.
Sounds like a free. Yeah, it was
The what?
free day when everyone was off. Our closed movie was 11.
No, that's like a pro night.
They're all evil crossing. I think it's the gov thing.
Cause you're fucking like,
Accurate, you might as well be silent.
Flight time.
you did TCDF, you said?
We're gonna be done with the poetry project by then. He's gonna have it all done.
Yeah, I don't know if you did.
And if he doesn't, then he has one time to grade us. Still bad. Expensive work.
Yeah, it shouldn't. It did.
He said that's if he's cruising, it could take up to an hour, but still, it's like, it takes longer than one summer.
And now I think I'm decided to write just like a 3-page paper on 1984, but it'll be done.
Thanks for busting your table. The Wolfman sits there next door.
No, it will, it's actually, it would say stuff like that on here.
He's not like,
so much artistic expression.
yeah, he's not like gross though. His desk is not like that. Could be the first hour person that sits here. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Past tests. Corrections. I mean, the only greatest test, so. Yeah, that's what you gotta do.
Why did you make it for the only greatest test?
It's a college class, man.
I know, this is, I've taken it when I was 5
I mean, you could say the only greatest test, but I also give you like half your points back if you do.
I know, that's true.
But like when I went to college in math, there's no point grades. It's just, cause that's just like a, no, it's just like a buffer,
Okay.
like my geometry class, I give like 30% of the grade as homework, so just turn shit in. You're gonna, you know what I mean? But that's not how it works in college.
That's great.
And you won't have the corrections in college either. Yeah, so is that a nice inspirational speech for you this morning? You asked why, I'm just telling you.
But when I asked what the interval is, the internet says my interval is short, so I don't know how they got that. Oh, yeah.
That would make me so sad.
Makes sense.
Nah, that would make me very sad. Sounds good. By the way,
What did I see today? Just a tweet.
I feel like I still
It's
think.
like, yeah, obviously.
what?
Oh, he
I said
tweeted.
I feel like I still think this.
Tweeted or Banks insulting like and constantly dying in the trenches of all politicians. Who are you? Elon Musk. You're gonna drive me to the crossbar.
That's
Saw it, I
crazy.
was like, alright, dude. Yeah. Just realize. Oh, and I'm driving through so fast. I don't understand where we're going. That's all that. You don't understand. It's your job, especially. Sorry, I sounded really condescending and like rude. No, it's because I'm keeping an extra secret from you because it's a surprise for you. No, it's a surprise. What it is. It's a surprise. I can't tell you.
Oh.
It's a surprise. Ruins past. Oh, we're about to do it. Surprise.
So, get out of my way.
I like reading. I missed the last two.
I like when it's a traffic.
That's the robotics thing in the rotunda.
Yeah, we just start singing
Yeah.
again, and then you get to.
It's just like
That's what you have to like put hoops on or something.
the PVC, but it's coral. That's the main piece. It's basically a reef and it's like steel right here. So like we brought it all up here and we're not letting it back. I used to.
No, I don't blame you.
Today after school, we're gonna drive it. Yeah.
And when do you compete?
Friday.
Like this week, Friday?
Yeah, and next Saturday, Sunday. And then the day are all set up.
Is Matt, Elias, Ryan, and Jason in it? Answer your emails.
He's wearing a hat. See, no one knows who you are when you wear a hat.
I'm here.
Who knows everybody else?
Oh, okay, okay. Email, alright. Show him the
You're
desk.
so annoying.
Sorry.
Jason and Ryan was just. Okay. Then what, video thingy did they suggest you use to record videos?
I'm using, it's still running actually, now I'm just having so it's not like ideal, it's called OBS.
You're saying.
I think it's more